In this episode of Into the Mythic, we delve into the role of caves in the Irish mythic imagination, starting with the ancient idea that the truth itself is to be found in darkness. We discuss how ancient Irish bardic schools honoured the role of the dark in creativity. From there, it's an easy jump to the idea of caves as portals to alternate realities and the possible multiverses that might exist alongside our own. Listen in the dark if you dare. Today we're going to talk about caves in Irish mythology, which is quite a vast topic, Paul. Where are we going to start?
We're going to start underground.
Good start.
Now, the thing about Ireland is there are certain areas where there are great caves, but there are large areas where there aren't caves. And I think the darkness was very important to people in the past. For instance, the poets said, it is in the darkness we find truth. And I think that's a really beautiful statement. They used to lock themselves into a little cell, a little building, or maybe a cave, and close it up, and they would compose in the dark. And, when you think of our archaeological sites, there are lots and lots of souterrains and passage tombs and all these the 4 different types of tombs we have. And they're underground, but they're not really. So they kind of dig down underground, and then over the underground area, they build a cairn or a mound so that you can walk into the cave and you can close the door and be in perfect darkness.
So you think that maybe some of these megalithic structures and some of these ancient structures are ancient people trying to find a way to have the experience of being in a cave?
Oh, I think so, yes, definitely.
Because it's interesting, it links into what we know about ancient rock art in mainland Europe.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the Homo sapiens were living in caves going back 40, 50, 60, 70,000 years BC. So we must have been a cave-dwelling people in some way as we came up through Europe. Yeah. Yeah. And then later on in our history, we ended up on an island that isn't known hugely for its caves. I mean, we have some caves, but we don't.
We have some, but not a great number. And they're not particularly habitable. They're quite damp and drippy, and I suppose because of the climate, but, they're not like Lascaux or somewhere like that where they're bone dry.
No, you wouldn't be living in a beautiful limestone cave.
No.
Because it'd be so wet.
It'd be soaking wet, yes.
You wouldn't be lighting fires.
Yeah.
So that's really, really interesting. So the idea that some of these structures that we've all grown up hearing about, these beautifully, not ornate, but complex engineered structures, are to in some way make room for the dark.
Yes.
To allow people to go into the dark, into the recesses of the earth and do what in them, I wonder?
Yeah, I think you can't really understate this enough, because I think in the past, nowadays we don't really think about caves. You and I, we go our life. We don't really. You might go into the odd cave, you might peer in, but we don't really live in caves. So that's removed from us. But when you think of long ago, I think they were much more closely associated with darkness, with caves. But with darkness, they didn't have lights. They didn't even have lanterns. Basically, they just had, rush lights, things like that. So there were long periods of severe and complete darkness, except for the stars and so on. So I think they sought out this darkness as a way of thinking, of getting in touch with whatever was real.
And I suppose there's that thing of when you shut down one sense, the other senses become more alive.
Of course.
So we live as the human animals that we are, largely by our eyesight during daylight hours.
We do, yes.
And that's how we've been designed. We're kind of looking everywhere and taking all the information in. So maybe there's this thing where in order to access the other information that can come in through the human being, we need to shut down the sight.
Yes, yeah. And there is a phenomenon that's well known when sighted people lose their sight for a period, like going into darkness or into a cave, where acoustically, their hearing, well, it gets better, of course, but you also have these phantom sounds, and they're very often, they sound like children. in the distance. And people working, archaeologists, for instance, digging in a cave, they keep saying, I heard, did you hear that? And they keep hearing these children chattering or talking or calling in the distance.
Oh, I never heard that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Of all the things for the brain to throw up.
Yeah.
Children chattering in the distance.
Yes. I'm glad it's children and not howling monsters or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or scary bears and wolves.
Yeah.
So this is, I suppose, our way of trying to start off the conversation about the role the caves might play in some of the ancient stories of Ireland. Because if we understand that there are a sort of a needed space, an alternative way of being, you can go into this darkened space and be in a different mindset.
Yes, exactly.
And you started by saying the poets said that it's in the darkness we see the truth.
Yes, yeah.
Wow. That's a kind of an amazing thought.
It is. And they would be locked away for 7 days at a time on bread and water or some very basic amount of food. And they would compose in the darkness. And once then they'd pull down the door, let them out, open the door, whatever they did. They'd come out, they would recite their new poem.
And this is the bards of the Brehon era who we've talked about before. And they would have been sometimes in these little huts, so not in caves as such, but they would have been in purpose-built huts.
Yes, in huts, maybe, yes.
And this composition process would have been, which I find interesting, linked to fasting.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there's that whole other thing that when we're not eating and when we're fasting, other things can also come in.
Sure, yes, yeah.
So that's extraordinary. So that's what a professional bard did at various points in their life.
Yeah.
Starve in the dark.
Yeah.
And if you come up with something really bad, I wonder, do they not let you out? It's like, is it any good? Is that poem any good? You'll have to go back in there for another week on bread and water. So that's an amazing thought. And it's, again, a sort of interesting insight into the kind of world we're living in now, where this seems like a very unusual thing. And caves are places you might visit on a holiday if you go to Mitchelstown or if you go to the Oweynagat Caves in the Burn, but they're not something that are part of our everyday life.
No, they're not. They're not.
And darkness isn't really part of our everyday life.
No. Particularly in the populous part of the country, where there's so many people living in cars and houses and buildings and lights and everything. I remember flying over America one night. It was nighttime and it was just a blaze of lights below the whole way across.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we've lost maybe our darkness, the dark places. So does that mean that we've lost our access to the truth?
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
According to the old poets of Ireland, anyway.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about the kind of stories that maybe have caves as characters in them or caves as locations in them.
Yeah, well, the principal caves for the purposes of mythology are Oweynagat in Roscommon, which is one of 250 or so sites, archaeological sites, connected with Rathcrohan. And there's a cave under Crohan Hill as well. And this was the centre of power in Connacht. This is where Queen Maeve was born and lived. And Oweynagat is one of them. It comes from the Irish Oweynagat. Owe is a cave, one of the words for cave, and Nagat of the cats. And it's, possibly from the cats that were said to draw the chariot across the sky, the sun. There were supposed to be cats who drew the chariot.
I didn't know that. And is that linked to Dagda?
Yes,
Dagda and his chariot?
Yes.
So they were cats?
Yeah, cats who did it.
What kind of cat, though? I mean, you would have wild cats?
Yeah, wild cats, lynx, and then which they would have domesticated.
Huh. Okay, so we had cats and we had cats pulling our chariot.
Yes, yeah.
I always think of them as more exotic than Irish cats.
We had cats before we had horses. So they wouldn't have had horses probably pulling the chariot at that speed.
We had cats before we had horses in Ireland.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And one of the things about caves, they discovered in them, it broke this old, there was a traditional belief that frogs were only introduced in by the Normans, or anyway, fairly recently. But they have found bones of frogs in the recesses of caves. that go way, way back. So that scotches that rumour.
There was a type of frog here.
Yes. Yeah.
Whether it's the one that's around
Yeah,
now
we
or
don't know
not.
if it's the same one, the Rana. Yeah.
Okay, so this cave of the cats, that is really interesting, because I've heard of the cave and I know a bit about the cave, but I've always wondered why it would be called the Cave of the Cats.
Yes, yeah. And there's also it probably is the cats who drove the solar chariot, but there are also stories of, like, one time when Cuchulainn, this is a side shoot from the Red Branch Tales, and it's Brickrew's feast. We haven't actually covered this, but we will, because it's a great story. And Brickrew was he was a real whore. He was a devil. He used to turn people against each other. This was his fun. He was a Brickrew of the evil tongue, and he would say things and get them, and he'd get them fighting. And he had a big feast. Everyone had turns to have feasts, and he pushed to have his feast. And King Conor didn't want to have one there because he knew there'd be murder, because Brickrew would be in charge. So he finally agreed on condition that Brickrew wasn't there. So Brickrew said, no, I'll just greet people as they come in. But he was going to have his revenge. So as the women came in, the woman of Cuchulainn, who was the preeminent champion, of Legara and of Conall Carnock, as their woman came in, each of them, he said, of course you should be in the main seat as wife of the main champion. And then they got talking to their husbands and nagging at their husbands, and the husbands then started fighting. So just to cut a long story short, they fell foul of each other, and Conor wanted to get rid of the problem but get it sorted as quickly as possible. So he got Ailill and Maeve to act as judges. Now, they didn't want to have anything to do with it because this was a rival kingdom, but they had to. So they went over there for 3 days and 3 nights, were given everything. And the 4th night, these 3 monstrous cats, ferocious, terrible cats, emerged from the cave. And Legara and Conall Carnock legged it and headed away, and Cuchulainn faced his down and won, and he was declared the champion. So that's another for a possible name, a reason for the name of the caves. But I think the other one is more old.
And it wouldn't have to be one or the other, really. Both could be.
Yes,
exactly, the two are
yes,
not mutually incompatible. That
exactly.
It could be both the solar cats, the cats pulling the solar chariot, and also then subsequently there could be this.
Yeah, of course. Of course they could. Yes.
Event with Cuchulainn.
Yep.
So Ailill and Maeve of Taun fame
Yes.
were asked to come and adjudicate on what was essentially a kind of domestic spat about who was a higher ranking
champion.
Champion.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. Now the cave gets its name from. There's a great story of Midir and Etain, who were lovers, and they ran away, and it kind of follows the cycle of the sun. Because they went in a sunwise way around Ireland, but anyway, that's for another podcast. And Etain's maid was Crochan Croderrig, and Croc means a hook, but it also means saffron, or cream, that kind of colour. And Croderrig means blood red, so it's the turning from saffron to blood red. So that's kind of the setting sun. And her eyelashes and eyebrows and her whole entire head was bright red, apparently.
In a good way or a bad way?
I don't know. It's a good question. They didn't talk about things like that in those days. They just were. But so Midir named Crochan, the place, after Crochan Croderrig, because he gave it to her and she stayed on there as they moved on, and she gave birth to Maeve there. Now Maeve means the intoxicating one. So it's a great name to have.
It's brilliant. So this is the same Maeve.
Yes, yeah, or possibly, a different layer of her anyway, but it's the same Maeve. Yes.
in that way that characters in our mythology have this kind of continuities but often inconsistencies.
Exactly. Yes.
So they can be both divine and mortal, and they might actually have a burial cairn while also being, they never actually existed.
Yeah, and they can be mythological and historical.
And historical, yeah, exactly. So there might be bones somewhere belonging to a Queen Maeve, but then there is also this character who actually transcends any of that, and who's in and out of stories over thousands of years. Yeah. So this is Maeve, and that's another link then to the cave.
Yes, yeah. And there's another story, there's a great long saga called Axra Nere, which is the adventures of Nera, who was a Connacht warrior. And in this story, he has a recently hanged man, and he brings him into the cave to get water, because I'm not sure why, but he wants to give him water. And when he's in there, when he comes out again, he sees Maeve's Rathcrohan, Maeve's seat has been laid waste by a whole lot of the Sidhe who came out of the other world. Because we don't have an underworld, but the Sidhe live in this other world. We've talked about this. They're sideways to the sun. And the entrances to these are at fairy thorns or at some of these caves. And Oweynagat is like the gates of hell in a way. But that's very biblical, but anyway, it is called that.
So it's a portal.
Yeah, it's a portal
into another dimension, potentially.
Yes, and there are several stories. Just to deviate slightly, there are several stories about it. In the schools collection, for instance, there are three men decided they would go into Oweynagat, and they tied a rope and they went in with candles, and they went on and on and on and on, and finally their candles ran out, and they found a lake, and there was a red-haired woman doing her washing at the lake, and they had a little chat with her, and then they followed the rope back out. And there was another story when which is this story is very interesting, because it was first recorded several hundred years ago, but it was repeated by every generation as if it was someone's auntie or something. And when there was a big raid and there were cattle running all over the place, one woman was looking after a calf, and she had it by the tail, and it dragged her into Oweynagat, and she came out at Cruachan. And people just tell that as if it's perfectly natural.
She came out what?
At Cruachan, at the other place, which is 30 kilometres away or something.
Ah, okay. So she was dragged in and then came out 30 kilometres away. Yeah. And it said, that happened to Maggie, my aunt's sister.
Yeah, and it's repeated in the schools collection, the folklore collection.
Yeah, which is just for people who don't know, it's a folklore collection. What year was that?
Well, it was in the 30s, and then later, and then more recently they've done it again.
So they got the kids in school to write out the stories that they've been told at home.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're all written in this beautiful penmanship that nobody could do now.
Yeah, exactly.
And even though they're like 11, they write beautifully and they tell the stories. And I've noticed that when I read them, that it's like, it happened to my grandfather's friend, or it happened to my grandfather's uncle, or it's always somebody you know.
Yeah.
So she got pulled in by the calf and came out the other side.
And she came out in another cave, and people just thought that was perfectly natural, because you know these stories, there's castle, almost any castle, any of these old tower houses, there's always a local belief that there's an underground tunnel that brings you out at the bay or at some other archaeological site, even though there's no proof of it.
Well, it's, I suppose, that thing in mythology where time and space are malleable.
Yes. Exactly.
And they can be one thing one day and another thing another day.
Yeah.
And this mythic psyche accepts that.
Yes.
We accept when we're in this realm of story and of magic and of stories that have been told for such a long time, we accept that there isn't a logical linear progression to time.
Yeah, and I think in Ireland we're particularly good at that. And it drives me crazy when I'm reading books about the mythology, and they're always trying to link it to Roman mythology or Greek mythology or something. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there is a link. Maybe there is, but it doesn't matter. Why go there? Because we have our own. We tell it our way, and we sort of believe it.
Well, you have to suspend your disbelief for the duration of the story if you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I suppose we do that all the time. Anyway, even when you're watching television, there's a bit of you that has to believe that what you see on the screen is real.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
Even while you know it isn't.
Yeah, there's an actor and an actress who were in another film.
And 52 cameras and a big budget if you're watching Netflix.
Yeah.
But you still manage to believe in the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
exactly.
the devices of that story.
If it's told well enough, yes.
Yeah. So similarly for these stories, I suppose people just had to sort of suspend and enter into it.
Yes.
And there are then these truths that can emerge from the untruths. That's the thing about fiction. It's a fiction, but there's a truth underlying it.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. And I just, in terms of how we're telling this story on this podcast, you started out by talking about, just there a minute ago, about a character who'd been hanged, but then he went to bring him water. I don't really get that.
I don't really either, but Nera was this Connacht warrior, and a friend of his was hanged, and he brought him to give him water.
So he wasn't dead?
Well, it doesn't say.
This is classic.
Yeah.
This is classic Irish mythology.
Yeah.
So this poor man, we don't know whether he was dead or alive, but he needed a drink of water.
Maybe the water in Oweynagat would revive him, even a dead man or something. I'm not sure. But he carried him into Oweynagat.
See, there's a whole story just in there. Isn't
There is.
In those 3 sentences, this hero brings his friend to a magical cave after he's been hanged to give him some water.
Yeah.
Sure, you could write a novel.
And they probably had one, and people listening to this would say, oh yeah, carry on. This is a different story about this fellow that was hanged, but they knew the story. But we've forgotten that now anyway.
But we know, or the bit that's carried on through time is that he's trying to get him a drink of water in this particular cave, Oweynagat. And when he comes out, he finds Rathcrohan, Maeve's, the seat of Maeve's power, the seat of Connacht, the province of Connacht, has been laid waste and everyone killed. And he's horrified. And he sees the men, the warriors who had performed the act heading back into Oweynagat. So he follows them and he sneaks after them and very bravely does so, and he finds the whole world down there, and he's captured, but he's treated well because it is the other world, so it's like Tiernan Og, so they're living this perfect life really. And what do we know about this world? Because I'm very curious. So he gets pulled into this alternate reality that's coexisting alongside.
So it's High Brasil, Tiernan Og, whatever.
Sideways to the sun.
Yeah, sideways to the sun. It's this land where people don't grow old, they don't get sick, they don't have problems. There's an abundance of food and drink. They party all night. They play music and love each other all day.
Wow. And one just interesting thing about where we're getting to in 21st century thinking is about multiverses.
Yes.
You can read very respectable science articles now about the potential reality of the multiverse, where there would be alternative universes that coexist, just a little atom's breadth away from where we are. But this is a story told thousands of years ago by people who didn't have any sense of modern science that has the same idea underlying it, which is just there. If you can just get there, if you can go to the right cave at the right time, there is this entirely alternative universe.
Exactly. And this is part of Irish storytelling, as is magic realism, which was a big thing in South America a few years ago. But we've always had magic realism in our stories.
And the question, I suppose, that's really curious is how you find your way through the portal. If you're not in Star Trek and you don't have a starship that can go at warp speed through the wormhole, how do you get to the other side? So the answer seems to be through caves. Through these particular caves. Caves.
And possibly it's particular times of year. Well, Oweynagat, of course, was famous for being the birthplace of Samhain. So the festival of Samhain happened there when the cats came out, and it was the home of the Morrigan as well. So she's one of the three sisters, or 3 women in one, along with Balv and Macha, yes, Macha and Morrigan and Morrigu. And Morrigan means Mór Rian, the great queen, the great one, the great queen. So she is the goddess of war and battles, but she's also of fertility. She looks after the people and the territory.
I feel like she's a whole podcast to herself, or they are the tripartite goddess.
They sure are, yes,
which is really interesting. As I say, tripartite, if you think about what replaced pagan belief in this country, it's Christianity.
Yeah.
And the whole point of the shamrock is that it's the the triple
Yes,
god,
yeah.
but it's the triple god,
Yes.
and all three are masculine entities
Yeah, exactly,
in the
yes,
Christian telling.
Yeah.
But you find around the world this idea of the triple.
Yeah. And we also have Eru, Banba and Fola.
Yeah, another triple
Yeah,
goddess.
another triple goddess. Yeah.
And these are kind of the different energies or manifestations of the sacred feminine.
Yes, exactly.
Which is a whole other, well, it's not a whole other thing, because I suppose in some ways the cave is the ultimate metaphor for the sacred feminine.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah.
It's the opposite of the phallus or the pyramids of Egypt or the big towers that are built. It is
Exactly,
it's
yes,
the steep,
yeah.
it's the umphalos.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there's a lot going on there now.
Yeah.
We could do about 5 different podcasts, and we will continue to delve deep. But this particular cave, Oweynagat, what I'm curious about here is that do we have 3 cats that come out, or is it just
3 cats?
3 cats come out, and also then in a sort of sideways story that exists alongside that story, there are 3 goddesses, 3 really potent, including the Marigu, Banba, and Maka.
Yeah.
And Maka we've talked about before in a different context as the
yeah.
goddess of the horse, but she might have a different role here.
Yeah, and in that story, she's sort of different as well.
Yeah, just might be the same word.
Yes, yeah.
And maybe not the same character.
Yeah.
And the Morrigan is pretty fascinating because it is this, she's thought of as the kind of harbinger of death, or at least she attends death.
Yeah, she does, but she also attends plenty and fertility and looks after the people and their territory. So she kind of got a little bit waylaid in more recent times because she takes the form of the crow and she picks over the battlefield and she's always in the background. She had a bit of a running battle with Cuchulainn. Again and again, she meets him and offers him help, and he spurns it, and then she turns on him, and he's, there's all this kind of stuff. But that's a different
story.
podcast.
But I bet you that's to do with, that is definitely to do with the sacred feminine and the offerings of the sacred feminine to Cuchulainn, who represents this particular extreme form of masculinity and warrior.
Yeah. And do you remember the story when the Dagda he went to talk to the Fomorians, and he was heading away, and he met the Morrigan washing herself in the stream, and she had 1 foot in each bank, and they made love.
As you do.
And that was, and then she promises him during the lovemaking, she promises him that she will kill or was it Lou? I can't remember now. But anyway,
kill his rival.
Yeah, she'll kill his rival, and she does so.
It's endlessly fascinating. It's just because this is a classic example of the Irish mythological web.
Yes,
because you just get to one little thread, and off it you could go in many ways.
Exactly.
And we live, I suppose, in a more linear time where we would like to be held by one single narrative arc. Yeah. But it's almost not possible in Irish mythology when you go beneath the surface of the simple story. Yeah. You have to be prepared to go into these diversions to try and really get the sense of it.
Yeah. But anyway, back to Nera.
Yes. Okay.
So Nera,
the man with the hanged friend.
Yes, and so he's gone underground following them. He gets captured. He gets caught up in the otherworld life. He meets a woman, falls in love with her, and marries her. And she tells him that what he saw hadn't happened. It will happen the following Samhain. His vision of Rathcrohan being destroyed and everybody killed and the place burned to the ground.
Okay.
That hadn't happened. It would happen, or it will happen, the following Samhain if he does nothing. So he managed to make his escape, and he got to Maeve and told her about it. And she led a group of warriors down into Oweynagat, and they had a great victory and went back up.
So they battled these otherworld people.
Yes. But Nera stayed on with his wife. Now, Maeve, of course, is an elemental goddess as well as a queen. So maybe this is what she's doing. She's going into the otherworld, underground, to defeat their forces. Maybe that's like the sun rising, spring coming, all this.
Or just humans overground as we understand them, finding a way to triumph over the supernatural.
Yes, yep, true, yep.
So that their civilization can endure.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Well, my head is kind of spinning already. That feels like about 12 stories.
I know. And then there's another set of caves The
Okay,
other,
hang on. Let's have a minute. Just because there's so much meaning in that could be. I mean, that's the Odyssey.
yes, I know.
With
Yeah,
as much
yeah.
information in there as you might get in a Greek epic.
Yeah, I know.
And we're only 30 minutes in.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of metaphor.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yeah. It's dripping with metaphor.
Dripping with metaphor and a lot of deep meaning.
Yes.
But the real thing is this feeling that there is this alternate reality that one can access through caves.
Yes, yeah.
If one is in the right headspace at the right time, the right moment, or just a bit of luck in some cases.
Yeah.
And then time and space are different in there.
Yeah.
And there are entire other realities living alongside us.
Yeah. Yes. And if you remember the She or the Tuatha De Danann, when they were defeated, they went into the Hollow Hills. So that's where they took themselves into the Hollow Hills. They turned sideways to the sun, but they went into the Hollow Hills. So they're the otherworld people.
And one of the things I've noticed over the years as we've been doing this, and just generally, I suppose, in my lifetime of hearing these stories, that the worlds described in the other world, they tend to be full of abundance with people who are living forever and really healthy and full of love. Like Tir na Nog, High Brazil, all these places. It's not hellish. It's almost the opposite of hell.
Exactly, yeah.
So when you said at the beginning, Oweynagat, gates of hell, it's actually a complete flip on the Christian story.
Yes, yeah.
It's that if you could get into this world, you'd have a lovely wife and
exactly.
loads of, and even just the kind of silly stuff about the pots of gold under the mountain.
Yeah.
But there's a thread running through the Irish storytelling tradition that this other world is actually better than ours.
Yes. And actually, when Christianity came here first, the Irish monks, they couldn't cope with original sin. And they came up with the idea of original blessing, that we were born with blessed, because how could a baby, an innocent baby, be born with a stain on its soul?
So the newly converted pagans of Ireland could not get their heads around the idea of original sin.
And they invented the sacrament of penance to get rid of it, which became standard practice in the church.
It's amazing. I mean, born blessed. How about that?
Yeah.
As opposed to born with sin.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe we have something in us and in our psyche that actually doesn't fit very well with the hell and damnation and the punitive aspects of Christianity.
Yeah.
And we have this sense of another world where you're not old and you're not sick, and it's kind of heavenly, really.
Yes, yeah, it is.
If only you could find it.
Yeah.
Any more caves then that we can try?
Well, the other big caves are the caves of Kesh Corran in County Sligo. And they're another outcropping of limestone. And there are 17 caves there. And they're varying degrees of storytelling. Like there's one is Cormac MacArt, the High King of Ireland. He was taken by a she-wolf and raised in the cave. And then he was found crawling around on all fours when he was a young lad, and brought away and grew up to become King Cormac MacArt. And it's said that he went back there at the end of his life and is sleeping in one of the caves and to return when Ireland needs him or Connacht needs him.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other kind of twist on time.
Yes, yeah.
And causality. And when do we decide that we need him?
Yeah. Surely he would have woken a while ago.
And there's also this thing, I suppose, that, again, the finality of death is something that every culture tries to come to some kind of terms with.
Yes, yeah.
And many cultures don't see it as a final thing. There's a somewhere afterwards.
Yes, yeah.
So the idea that he'd be waiting and he could be recalled because death is not final.
Yeah. And funny you should say that, because caves were very much part of this. For a long, long time, they used to bring certainly the higher caste people, but they'd put their dead body, once they died, they'd put their bodies in a cave, but at the entrance to the cave, or close to the entrance, and they'd wall it up because there's no signs of animal gnawing on them or anything like that. And then after a year or 2 years, whatever length of time it took for them to decompose completely, they'd pull down the wall, and they'd go in and take the skull and the long bones. So and then as time went by, they went further and further into the cave. So by Bronze Age times, they were burying them right at the back of the caves in deep recesses. And that's why they find finger bones and small bones, the ones that were left behind, and a whole jumble of them, different people, different bodies. There's very few complete bodies found in caves, and if they are, they're much later.
And do we know what they did with the parts that they bring with them?
They probably put them in Knocknarea or somewhere like that in these passage tombs.
So the more significant monuments, they would bring part of their loved ones' bodies to.
Yeah.
That's amazing, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's both very practical and potentially deeply spiritual.
Yes, yeah.
Because you can't just maybe bury everybody in the most prominent, most prestigious place, but you could bury parts of everybody.
Yeah. Or you could pick one person to represent the clan or the tribe and bury a part of him or her in a sacred place to represent your clan. And
you say this after I suggested that maybe the finality of death is something that's not really a part of our indigenous culture, because in that sort of way of being, there's maybe the first burial, the first death, where you have to leave the body behind, walled up in this cave space. But then there's another part of the process. You get to go back and do another thing.
Yes, exactly.
A reinterment or a re-engagement with the death and with the body of the loved one.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah.
And I suppose also there's no hiding from it. You know, in a culture like that, you're not going to the undertaker and never seeing it all again.
Exactly, yes, yeah.
You have to go and deal with it.
Yes, yeah, you do, yeah.
Gosh, fascinating.
It is. So the caves of Kesh, they're called Kesh Coran, and Kesh was a giant sow. Now it was James Joyce, was it called? Ireland, the Great Sow that eats its own farrow.
I think so. Yeah. Sounds about right.
Yeah. Anyway, it was one of those boys. But Céal Kesh was this great sow, and she was laying waste the country, and people were chasing her, and the time of the Fianna, and they pursued her, and there was a harper called Curran, who was the harper of Dian Cecht, who was the healer, the son of the Dagda, and he finally got her in Sligo, and he played his harp and lulled her to sleep, and her 3 piglets became 3 hills there called the Mucklish, the small pigs, or the pigs, and her body became the great hill, the hill of Curran, which is named after him, after the harpist.
Oh wow! So music triumphed over the rampaging sow.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Which is something we've also discussed, that to be truly proficient with your harp,
yes, yeah,
you had to be able to make people
exactly, yes, yeah,
fall asleep with sudden calmness. Was one of the things you had to do, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly, yes, yeah.
Wow, magic. So the magic of the music soothed the sow, and then they went into the landscape, and this is another theme endlessly. The fact that the landscape is animate.
Yeah,
the landscape is alive.
Yeah.
So who gathered these stories?
Well, people just told them. They told them around the fire at night, and eventually they were, the storytellers would have gone around, the bards would have told them officially, and then unofficial bards would tell them, and then they were eventually written. The monks wrote them down, a lot of them. A lot of them are in the ancient books, Laur na Húra, Laur Lion, the Book of Leinster, all these kind of...
You'd love to know
manuscripts.
What they were like before they were written down. At least I would.
Yeah.
Because the process of writing, as well we both know, changes what's in the mind or in the mouth and puts it into a different...
Yeah, and they were written by Christians as well, so they put their Christian slant on it as well.
Or scribes. Yeah. And nobody ever hears the same story the same way. That's the other thing.
Yes, yeah.
Whoever writes it down is writing down their version.
Yeah. Yeah,
but then we have it, and we wouldn't have them at all if they hadn't been written down.
Oh yeah, no, and stories do change over time. That's just a fact of life, and you have to accept that and embrace it.
Yeah, I think that might be sufficient for the day, sufficient unto the day. It's a lot, isn't it?
Yes.
And we could maybe revisit this.
Yeah, well, I've plenty about the caves of Kesh that we can talk about, and there's other caves as well that are, they're to a lesser extent they're involved in the mythology.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting, and I'm also interested in some of the archaeology.
Yes.
You know, the bare bone that was found in the cave in Clare that pushed back settlement in Ireland by 8,000 years.
Yeah.
And then another bone, a reindeer bone that has marks from a knife found in Cork.
Yes, yeah.
That pushes settlement in Ireland back another 8,000 years. So we could talk about that too.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, great.
Thank you so much. That's really, really, I'm going to have to stop recording and then listen to it all over again.
Yeah. To get your head around it.
To get my head around it, exactly. Or maybe to go into a darkened room and just listen to it again.
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah.
Listen to this this podcast is best listened to in the dark.
In the dark, and then do a bit of dreaming afterwards to see.
Well, actually, it is too. That's a fact. If you sat with just a candle and a glass of wine and sat by your fire and just listened to this, I think that's the perfect way to let it flow over you.
And maybe don't think about it too much.
Yeah.
Don't try to understand it too much, because we're in that place in history where we all try to understand everything and to grab hold of things.
Yeah.
And actually, some things are not really meant to be understood, I suppose. They're just meant to be experienced.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. And I think what we should do is, in the next episode, just continue on this theme and maybe explore some more of the caves and the stories around them and see what comes up from that.
Great.
Okay. Thank you so much, Paul.
Slán go fóill.
Slán.